Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bearded Hobbit channel. Today I wanted to talk about being prepared. There's a lot of us that live in areas where we're at risk of some type of natural disaster occurring within our lifetime, sometimes more than once, right? So what I wanted to do is create a series that goes over some basic ideas of being better prepared. You may see these listed as being home prepared or natural disaster prepared. It's all the same to me in my mind. And so for today, in part one of this series, I want to talk about mindset. Okay, well, what do I mean by mindset? Okay, well, I can tell you from experience, I've been through a couple of hurricanes. I've had my yards flooded out. The house is almost flooded. I've had a tree come through the roof and kind of flooded out my kids' room. So I've got a little bit of experience on that side. And it's going to be different for everyone. But the goal of being prepared, right? Home preparedness, natural disaster preparedness, whatever you want to consider this, the goal is to reduce anxiety. That's really kind of what we're talking about. Because if you are better prepared for these scenarios, you can reduce your anxiety tremendously. And that's going to be extremely important, right? Because when we have high anxiety, when we're really anxious, as humans, we're much more quicker to anger. We have much shorter fuse when we have lots of anxiety. We tend to not make necessarily the best decisions when we're angry or when we have high anxiety. So the goal here is to reduce that, right? Because the idea is if we have the basics, right? If we have some food and water, we have what we require, well, we're okay, right? We're okay for now. And so that can lead you to make much better decisions further down the road in trying to plan out the next step, okay? And I can tell you from experience that's extremely important, okay? Now, one thing I do want to make clear here, I want to make a distinguishing remark as to what was seen at the beginning of the pandemic here in 2020. At the very beginning of the coronavirus outbreak in the United States here, we saw a lot of people just hoarding stuff. That is not the same as what people call being a prepper or being prepared. Those people were not prepared by any means. That's why they were going out and just buying tons of stuff. If that was you, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus here, but that just kind of illustrates that we had a large group of people that were in no way prepared for what we were experiencing, okay? People that were prepared, they had everything they needed. They were just kind of hanging out at home. Maybe they ran out of coffee or they wanted to go get a pie. Okay, great, but they had all the basics. They weren't stressing out about it. So again, this is all about reducing that anxiety level. And there's many stages in kind of being more prepared. Again, most people call them preppers or whatever you want to call it. But I'm not going to be discussing getting a bunker and all that stuff. I'm talking about let's talk about basics that every citizen in the United States should have, right? On hand, just in case, okay? So that's where I want to start with today is the basics. Now, the very first thing of any type of plan is knowledge, okay? It's going to require you taking time and understanding a few things, and that is looking and seeing what it is that you might need, okay? It's looking at, well, what am I going to need to do well, okay? And so what I mean by that is where you're located, you have the best knowledge as to plan for whatever disaster you might be having. Let's say you live in the western part of the United States and you have to deal with wildfires. I've never been through a wildfire, so I can't really help you out there. But the basics that we're going to talk about, that'll absolutely help you. But you're going to have and know and get to acquire that firsthand knowledge of figuring out what it is you specifically need. That could be through reading online. That could be talking to your neighbors. Maybe people in your neighborhood have lived there for decades. They're going to have some really valuable information to kind of help you plan out your different scenarios. And so you are going to know specifically what you need for your area. So knowledge is key. And I'm not talking about knowledge like I need to go figure out how to start a fire with, a bow drill or 2 sticks. No. I'm talking about what it's required to help make your family and your home safe. Okay, that's where we're going with this, not the outdoor preparedness survival. Okay, that's a whole nother topic. Fun, but not this topic. Okay, and so in my opinion, kind of the first thing you should ask yourself is, what's going to make me safe, right? What's going to make me safe? What's going to make my home safe? What's going to make my family safe? Because once you've established that, then you, again, less anxiety, you can start making better decisions about what the next step should be, right? And so what we mean by that, and when I say me, I mean just kind of like prepper community, the royal we, right? And what I mean by that is, what about water? Do you have water? Do you have storage of water? Can you store water? What about if the power goes out? What about shelter, your home? And again, all of these things we're going to talk about in later parts of the series. What about medicine? If you're on medication, do you have a stockpile? Or could you get, if you saw, let's say, a hurricane coming, could you get your medicine prior to that storm making landfall? Or what about medical equipment that might need electrical power to run that, right? So these are the questions you want to start asking. If something were to happen and everything were to shut down for 3 days, 7 days, how would I handle that? And I think a lot of people are starting to understand that and really are getting a little bit clearer picture on that based on the pandemic of 2020 and understanding, okay, if everything shut down, how did that affect my life? And so it's important for us to consider and think about those things now to help us plan for things in the future, okay? Okay, so another part of this mindset that we have to accept, okay, is we can make a plan A, we can make a plan B, hell, we can even do a plan C. I will guarantee you those scenarios that you have thought through forwards and backwards will never happen the way you expect, okay? You might maybe get lucky, but there are way too many variables to expect a plan to work 100% of the time. So I'm going to tell you up front now, be ready to abandon that plan. Don't stick to a plan if it's a bad plan, okay, based on that scenario. Not everything's going to go the way that you have expected it to. And that's okay. If you're willing to accept that, you're going to be able to make those decisions a little bit better because you're not grasping at that same plan. Every plan will have a weak spot. Every single one of them, okay? I've talked to many people that, are in the same boat as me. We've got our water, we got stuff, like for example, I live around the Houston area. We're prepared for hurricanes. Well, not every hurricane is the same, right? Some we get flooding, some we don't. Some we get power outage, some we don't. And we're constantly learning. So be aware that you're going to have weak spots, and that's okay. And that is okay. Understand though, if you have the basics, right? If you figure all this out, and again, we're not talking like extravagant shelters or bomb shelters, and you've got 3 years worth of food. I'm not talking about anything long-term. I'm thinking, okay, you know what? I've got my basics here. The lights go out. I'm okay. But man, I didn't get that coffee, right? Or I ran out of so-and-so. Is that a deal breaker? Absolutely not. Because by having your basics, you're solid, okay? You are solid. And so what we tend to find out is once you have that, any little weak spots, they tend to be minor. Usually just inconveniences, things that you're like, you know what? I wish I had some raviolis. That would taste really good. I should have bought some of those. Or, you know what? I should have bought some, Jolly Ranchers or whatnot. Just little things. And so if you have that basic kind of prep, you should be good to go, okay? And so that's what the rest of this series is going to be about. We're going to discuss a few different things like water and power, again, just on the basic level to get everyone started. Because if we can have that on hand, this does so many different things. Number one, it keeps us from having to leave home. It keeps us safer because we're at home. Number two, it's going to keep us from getting into some type of emergency situation where, first responders are running around rescuing people and doing all these things. Well, if we have the stuff that we need, we don't necessarily have to fall into that category where, somebody has to rescue us, or we have to put in that 911 call or something along those lines, okay? Again, if you're in an emergency, then yes, obviously you will, but we are trying to avoid kind of taxing that system by having things earlier rather than after. We want to be proactive instead of reactive, right? And so that's part of this mindset, is understanding that concept, okay? All right, I could talk about this all day. There's so much more to discuss, but this is just basics just to get everybody started, okay? So please tune into the next episodes. Hopefully you'll find them informative. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and I'll try to answer you guys as soon as possible, okay? All right, on to the next episode.